and the difference between them is one is for small nonprofit, but they are both currently available. If you have any questions about any of those, please feel free to reach out to learn24@dc.gov, or there is an email which will come up later, and you can ask any other questions about the other applications as well. But today we are going to focus on the 2021 Summer Strong Coordinating Entity request for applications. So thank you again for joining today's information session. For partnership roles, the funding for the 2021 Summer Strong Coordinating Entity grant will be made available through the Office of Out-of-School Time Grants and Youth Outcomes, which is located in the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Education, and grant awards are contingent upon the availability of funds. The purpose of this grant, for purposes of this grant, the summer camp locations are determined by the DC Housing Authority, DCHA, and the Department of Human Services, DHS. And that is who we partner with for the purposes of this grant. The intent of this competition is to provide all-day summer programming for DCHA and DHS communities, which have traditionally been underserved. It is to engage grassroots, community-based vendors to provide programming through subcontracts. And the coordinating entity will be responsible for organizing the subcontracts, which I'm going to go into in a little bit more detail in just a minute. The other thing is, please, if you have questions, put them in, feel free to put them in the chat at any time. I will stop along the way to answer questions. And also, if you want to wait till the end, because it's very possible I touch on the question that's coming up, feel free to do that. We'll give opportunity at the end as well. So whatever you'd like. The scope of the grant. Organizations must demonstrate experience managing a summer camp or youth programming, experience managing subcontractors or a willingness to work with subcontractors, the ability to implement evidence-based practices that support positive youth development, and the ability to subcontract and coordinate with grassroots entities to provide educational, social, emotional, and physical health opportunities and activities for school-age youth. So the subcontracts, this is obviously a unique part of this grant opportunity. And let me just briefly explain how it will work. The OST office will issue a request for applications for subcontractors. We often call them vendors in December. These applications are for grassroots organizations and businesses to apply as vendors to provide programming. How we do that is it's similar in content to the small nonprofit grant that's open, in that organizations cannot have operating budgets of more than $250,000. They do need to be providing services. This can't be a new program that they're putting together. And we do often request that they have a connection to the community that they want to serve. The coordinating entity, with the help of the OST office, will review the applications and use them to create their full summer day camp. The reason that the OST office puts the request for applications out in December is that if we waited for coordinating entities to be selected, it would be too late for the coordinating entity to then put out a request for applications and receive those back before summer programming started. So we put the applications out, the request for applications, out on your behalf, but we do not select the vendors for you. The only thing we do is make sure that they have the proper eligibility requirements, and then we present all of those applications to you for you to select. And grantees and subcontractors may not charge a fee to any district youth attending the camp. The total amount of funding that the OST office anticipates awarding is $400,000, with individual grant awards up to $100,000. The OST office maintains the right to adjust the grant awards, and grant awards are contingent on the availability of funds. Youth development outcomes. The intent of this RFA is to support organizations with the ability to coordinate high-quality summer camps that improve the educational, social, emotional, and/or physical health outcomes of youth. Youth development outcomes are the results of programs and supports that are designed to engage youth to meet their developmental needs. These outcomes are the feelings, perceptions, behaviors, and abilities that youth develop in an environment that uses both an asset-based approach and positive youth development. Outcomes themselves are the knowledge, skills, attributes, abilities, and behaviors that youth need in order to be healthy, caring, and responsible as they transition to adulthood. So the target population and locations for these grants will be awarded to organizations serving school-age youth. The applications must serve youth who reside at either the DHS, short-term family housing, or DCHA communities. And we ask that the organizations explain their relationship to the community they have identified that they wish to serve. The OST office, with the assistance of DHS and DCHA, will contact applicants regarding site locations and may request a change of location. For those of you who have seen this application in the past, you will know that we have traditionally told you exactly which locations we are targeting for the coming summer. We did not do that in this application because of COVID. And we just don't know exactly what's going to happen and where we will need to target grants. So what we're asking applicants to do is to write your application for the location that you serve traditionally, and explain your tie to that community, and how you feel that that is the community that you want to serve this summer. DCHA and DHS will also, as I've said, look at the locations that you have requested to serve. And if they have other locations that they think, well, I don't really, for whatever reason, we're not going to serve this community this summer, but we believe that this other community would be better, they will be the ones to reach out to the applicants and discuss possibly changing the location, or how that will work this summer. It is a little bit more in flux than it has been in the past, but as you'd all know, we are being as flexible as we all can be as a result of coronavirus. So applicants who have experienced delivering service at public housing or for temporary housing communities may receive additional points. And for DCHA locations, youth from surrounding neighborhoods are eligible to participate as long as they are district residents. So for camp programming and dosage, the grant period will run from May 1st through August 27th, but programming must take place between June 14th and August 27th. So the organization will select which 6 consecutive weeks they want to program between that time period. And the programs must be a minimum of 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 6 consecutive weeks. Applicants must serve a minimum of 30 unduplicated youth, and the program must maintain the ratio of 1 to 15 unless a lower ratio is required. And there's a little typo right there, which I'll correct. I think right now is a good time to stop for a minute and see if anyone has any questions. Alex, is there anything in the chat box?
Give me 1 second to check. I do not believe I see any, but if you have any additional questions, please just go ahead and put them in the chat box, or you can put them in the question and answer portion as well, whichever is easiest and most convenient for you. No, currently I do not see any. Yeah, I do not see any currently.
Okay, great. And for anybody who joined after the introduction, if you would just put your name and organization in the chat box, while the meeting is not a mandatory meeting, it just helps us to know who's in the room, and we thank you all for your attendance. So technical assistance, the OST office will provide assistance during the grant period for training, for data entry, data management, youth development, coordinated improvement, measurement, and other supports. As you can see, even today, Kevin Cataldo, who is the manager for the Institute for Youth Development and offers lots of different trainings, is here, as is Tristan Kirkman, and he is the data analyst and helps run the database. We are all always available to help our grantees in whatever way we possibly can. Okay, eligibility and requirements. Organizational requirements. So organizations must be nonprofit organizations and have a 501c3. They must be operating for a minimum of 2 years. Fiscal sponsors are not eligible to apply. Organizations must have been incorporated and registered to operate in the District of Columbia. And organizations should have an overall operating expense of no more than 30% of their total annual organizational budget. All applicants must be in good standing with the IRS, and that's shown by submitting 2 years of 990 filings, and in good standing with the district, and that is shown by submitting a clean hand certificate and good standing and the basic business license. If an applicant is a prior Learn24 grantee, the applicant must be in compliance with all prior grant agreements. Please make sure to get your clean hands in good standing early. I know that in the past, some of those have been available same day, and it is possible that that still does happen. But as we all know, it is COVID and operations have changed. So we do suggest trying to apply for those a little bit earlier, because they are a required document to be submitted with your application. So grant fund limitations. Grant funds may only be used to support youth residing in the District of Columbia. A minimum of 93% of grant funds must be applied to direct program costs. And direct program costs can include things such as program staff salary and benefits, program supplies and materials, curricula, evaluation, and even field trip expenses, of course, if we get to have field trips this summer, which hopefully we will. No more than 7% of this grant may be used for general operating costs, such as overhead or indirect costs. And those are costs that cannot be tied directly to programming. That includes such things as audits, management salary, organizational rent, and grant writing. For a full list of grant fund limitations, please see the RFA. Additionally, there is a minimum of 40% of the grant, which must be used for a minimum of 4 subcontractors or vendors that will provide the direct services to the youth. That's what that's what I was talking about before with the subcontractors. They will be tasked with providing a program, usually 2 hours a day, 5 days a week for the 6 weeks to help create your summer camp. Grant funds may not be used in conjunction with other District of Columbia government grants, such as DOES or Summer Youth Employment, to serve the same program and the same youth. Summer Youth Employment, SYEP youth, may be used as additional staff support, but cannot be counted toward the grant for participants served if the organization is receiving funds from DOES. Grantees will be required to comply with specific insurance requirements from DCHA, the Housing Authority, and the government of the District of Columbia. And all of those are listed in the RFA. Grantees will need to coordinate directly with DCHA or DHS regarding any site-specific requirements. One other thing I do want to mention as well is if you are providing services for DHS, there is no opportunity to provide services on site for DHS communities. So you will need to provide services and locate a suitable location, preferably someplace you already program near a DHS facility, or be able to discuss the transportation that you will use for the youth from that DHS facility to where you will be able to program. DCHA often does have programming space available. But that does not mean that you would not be able to also use your own space if it's nearby and convenient and accessible. Okay, Alex, any questions yet?
There are no questions currently. I guess you're running through the information and they understand what's going on, or they're just saving their questions until the end. But no, there are currently no questions in the chat box. Question and answer portion.
Thank you, Alex. I'm going to take it as I'm just doing such a great job that no one has any questions.
I think I see confetti flying from the ceilings in a different. But yes, we'll agree with that.
Okay, let's move on to the scoring rubric. So applicants will be reviewed on a 96-point scale as follows. Organizational history, capacity and relevant experience is 24 points. Subcontractors, 24 points. Details about the summer camp that you're going to create, 36 points. And the budget, 12 points. For the scoring rubric, the rubric consists of 4 sections. Each row will be scored from 1 to 4 points, and checkboxes are listed under each description. The applicant will receive the score in which all of the boxes can be checked. So the first is 1 point equals either unacceptable or did not respond. 2 is an acceptable response. 3 is a good response, and 4 is an excellent response. We suggest that when you are writing your narrative, you have next to you the scoring rubric, because that's what the reviewers are going to have next to them. They're not going to have the narrative questions, they're going to have the rubric. So please read each section carefully, and the boxes under each section. To receive a score, all of the boxes must be checked in that box, which means that all of the information needs to be written in your narrative. The applicant will receive the score in which all of those boxes are checked. And there is, okay. So next, for supportive evidence, specific information and results based on evidence should be included in the application. That can be qualitative and quantitative. It can be stories about your organization or actual data. The application is an opportunity to show the reviewer the effectiveness of the program. The strongest applications include details on how evidence is collected, the data itself, the program changes that have been made based on the data, and information on how that affects the outcomes. I'm just going to make one more comment about the evidence. The reviewers are reading your applications, but they don't know your program like you do. So explain your program, explain why it's so good and how it helps the youth that you program. We often suggest that you have someone who is not a part of your program read through your application with the rubric in hand. Because since you're so involved in your own programs, it's often hard for you to see as you're writing the narrative. You might skip over certain areas that you need to explain to a reviewer who is not as intimately involved in your program. So for budget, the budget is part of the narrative and is not a separate section. Please provide the summer camp and organizational budgets. Do not just provide your organizational budget, but explain how that summer camp budget is going to work, how the money goes towards that summer camp. Detail how the grant award will be used specifically for the summer camp, and show how that aligns to the camp description and the activities. Detail the funds and a clear plan for subcontracting. Describe other sources of funding if they are secured or pending, and provide all necessary documentation. To continue on with earlier when I talked about technical help through technical support, logic models are required for this application. And we will be hosting a logic model workshop. Tristan Kirkman will be hosting that on November 16th. from 2 to 3. So if you either don't have a logic model or just want assistance in reviewing it and maybe updating it, please come to the workshop. For any questions related to this RFA or either of the other 2 RFAs, please submit any questions to this email, rfasummer2021@dc.gov, by November 13th in order to have those published by November 20th. You may ask questions at any time and they will be answered. Alex, should I pause or should I keep going?
You can pause for like two seconds, but no additional questions have come in as of yet, or no questions at all. So I guess we can let you get some.
I'm going to power on.
Okay.
Sounds great. All right, submission process. So there are several required documents. When you get to the submission part of the application, you will see places to upload each of these documents. The first is the 501c3 nonprofit organization document dated December 7th, 2018 or earlier, meaning that your organization has been a nonprofit for at least 2 years from the date of submission, because December 7th is the date that applications are required. That doesn't mean you can't submit them early. Please feel free to, but December 7th is the last date they are, the RFA is open. You will also need to submit a DCRA certificate of incorporation, also dated December 7th, 2018 or earlier, a clean hands certificate from the Office of Tax and Revenue, dated December 7th, 2019 or later. So in other words, within the last year. A certificate of good standing from DCRA, the DC Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. And that needs to be valid or renewed through August 27th, 2021. So in other words, if it is valid through April, you do not need to get another one. But if you are a grantee, you will need to renew that so that it is valid through August 27th. And that's the same thing with the basic business license. It needs to be valid through or renewed to be valid through August 27th, 2021. Continuing with required documents, you will also need to provide 2 years of the most recently completed income statement and balance sheet, 1 year of the most recent audit, financial review, or CPA engagement letter, and 2 years of the most recently completed 990s. A cover sheet and program locations, the narrative not to exceed 12 pages, budgets, both programmatic and organization. Sometimes they're on the same document, and that's perfectly okay. And those can be in any format. Certification and assurances, the logic model or theory of change, and the summer syllabus or agenda. So the application submission. Applications and attachments, as I said, must be received no later than December 7th by 5 p.m. Applications received after that deadline will not be reviewed. Applications without a confirmation email will not be reviewed, because you will be sent a confirmation email upon successful submission of the application. Incomplete applications will not be accepted. Applications will not be accepted by fax or in person, and no extensions will be granted for the submission of missing application components. And again, since it can't be said enough, no applications will be accepted after December 7th at 5 p.m. If you do not receive a confirmation email, contact us immediately. It means that your application was not successfully submitted. So the review process. The OST office will organize panels of 3 independent grant reviewers who have a background and knowledge of youth development and out-of-school time. Each application will be read by 3 reviewers. In the event that the 3 reviewer scores have a standard deviation of 10 or more, a 4th review will be completed, and the initial score with the greatest difference from the mean will be discarded. The 3 reviewer scores will be used to calculate an average score and to rank applications. These scores and ranks will be used to determine grant awards. The grant reviewers will read and score applications utilizing the rubric. All reviewers are trained in the use of the rubric for consistency's sake, and all reviewers are screened for conflicts of interest. Now, let me just say a little bit more about the reviewer process. As I mentioned earlier, we have 3 concurrent applications out right now. We suggest that anyone applying for one grant competition also apply to be a grant reviewer. It is a great way to learn more about the process, the other organizations that are out there, how to score, and what it takes to be someone who sits in that reviewer position. We think it always helps to inform and be able to write better narratives. And we can always use additional grant reviewers, but we also think it is a great way for you to grow in the field. So please think about being a grant reviewer, and feel free, if you haven't already seen the call for reviewers, to send an email to learn24@dc.gov if you would like to receive the application to be a grant reviewer. So additionally, for this application, there is also an interview process. The top 3 ranking applicants per site will be invited for an interview. The interview panel will include key stakeholders, and that may include representatives from the Deputy Mayor for Education's office, the OST office, DHS, DCHA, the resident council, parents, and even youth. The reviewer score, as well as the interview score, will be used to generate a final score, and the district will make final award decisions based on the final scores. All applicants will be notified via email about the status of the award by March 2021. Applicants will receive reviewer score sheets by March, and any application that scores 50% or less than the overall points available will not be eligible for funding. All funding decisions are final and are not subject to review, appeal, or protest. So application tips. Make sure that the application follows the RFA. When and if you are a reviewer, reviewers are always told to score 1 section at a time. So what that means is don't put information in the budget section that you also want related to the subcontractor section. You may be repeating yourself, but make sure that the reviewer can read one section and score everything right then and there in that section. That they don't have to look back and forth in your application to find the information. Do not submit documents or materials that are not requested in the RFA, such as your curriculum or photos. The budget narrative should be detailed. Please show your math and base that on each line item. We ask that because if the reviewer goes through your math in your budget and it doesn't add up, that will not look good on your organization. Please make sure that your math is accurate. Avoid general language, so be detailed and specific, especially regarding how you've improved your organization. Maybe it's with training, so talk about the different trainings that you've taken. Your ability to manage subcontractors, your program activities and schedule. Maybe you've created your schedule specifically because of your community needs and why you created it that way. You can talk about that. How you've incorporated youth voice and how you're tapping other revenue streams. Next slide. Thanks, Alex. Grantee requirements. If awarded, the grantee will be required to attend grantee meetings and activities, participate in research and evaluation activities, comply with insurance requirements, participate in administrative and programmatic site visits, ensure that all staff, volunteers, and subcontractors have the required clearances, utilize the district's database, provide programmatic updates, and provide financial documentation. Alex, do we have any questions yet?
No, Deborah, we do not have any questions currently.
Okay, well, so we're almost at the end, and if you do have any questions, please feel free to utilize the chat box. Alex, do we have anybody on the phone line?
1 second, let me check that.
Thanks. And I would just like to say that I'm really grateful that my voice held up because it was definitely cracking early this morning. So that worked out.
It's the T, but no, we do not have anybody on the phone line either right now. So yeah,
it is definitely the T. Okay, next slide, please, Alex. So important dates. The RFA was released on October 30th. Today is the grant information session. We have our logic model workshop going to be hosted by Tristan on November 16th. And on November 13th, please submit questions, and those will be published on November 20th. And applications are submitted December 7th. And in January, if we have any questions for applicants, we will reach out. And February or March are when interviews will be requested, and announcements will be made in March. And that is all that we have. So any questions that you have regarding grant competitions, you can contact Learn24 or RFA, what is it? The other email. Feel free to reach out to RFA Summer 2021 at dc.gov. And we thank you very much for your attendance today. If you do have any questions now, please feel free to put them in the chat box. And we will hold on for a few minutes, but I don't have anything else.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Alex, for all of your support.
Oh, anytime.